There we go.
All right.
Are you on?
I'm here.
I can't hear you.
You can't hear me. Let me see. Microphone. No, I'm all good.
I can't hear you. Are you talking?
Yeah, I checked my settings.
Welcome, everybody.
Well, hello.
Hello.
All right. Thanks for coming tonight. We're going to start in about 3 minutes. Thanks for spending your time with us.
Yeah,
Welcome
so
back.
showing up early, you get the extra 5-minute banter session where yeah, it's just witty banter for a few minutes because we let people trickle in and then we'll get going.
Bonus stories.
Bonus stories. You get the sneak peek of the very first slide in Dan Cockerell's slide deck.
Got a mask on the photo. Back in another time, another place.
Yes, that is a time we remember well. Look forward to it. Dan, have you've been over to the park a few times since masks were in place, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah,
Been a while.
I haven't been over there, but I've heard they're very good about it. That you see, for the most part, people are abiding by it.
It can do. It can execute a plan.
I'm going to fade off the screen real quick. The 5 people that were in the waiting room before we started over, I don't see any of them on here. So I'm going to go back and try to message them. So I'll be here, but I won't be here, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so a little behind the scenes, we were trying to turn on the co-host feature and found out you can't turn it on while you're on a Zoom call. You have to restart. And we had a few people that came in early, which is great because they were excited to see you, Dan. But unfortunately, they got bumped out of the call, and we were hoping when the call started again, it would just bring them right back, but it did not. So, hope David will get them back in here.
That's when you add another piece to the checklist of areas of improvement for Zoom. There's always something to improve upon.
That's right. There is. Yeah. And throughout the last year, as Zoom has been used by more and more people, some of their features have changed so fast, especially around security, that it was, for a while, it was hard to keep up with what they were changing and when they were changing it. You do was one call, and by the next call, a feature was completely different.
Yeah.
But I feel like now that we figured out the co-host thing, I'm completely caught up until tomorrow.
Yeah, whenever a new platform comes on, there's always a group of misfits and disruptors who like to see what havoc they can cause, which makes the company improve. So it happens fast.
Yes. Well, we're at 5 minutes in. Dave, are you all right if we start?
Go ahead, because and Dan, you and I will need to discuss how the recording's going, and because I know there's a couple of them that weren't able to make it, so I wanted to make sure that everything's followed as you need it to be, and see if different requests that people had can be honored.
It's good for me. You can record and do whatever you want with it. So,
all right,
good.
All right, take it. I'm gonna go mute.
All right. Well, to get us started, I am Jody Mayberry. I host Come Rain or Shine with Dan, his podcast. Dan Cockerell spent 26 years at Disney, started out parking cars at Epcot, and ended his career as the vice president of the Magic Kingdom. That's like a story written by Walt Disney himself. It's just incredible. I love telling people that story. And what we're going to do tonight is Dan is going to take us on a walk through the park. So, what a treat to get the chance to walk the Magic Kingdom with the man who ran it, 12,000 cast members, all of your favorite attractions. If I'm right, Dan, Magic Kingdom is the most popular theme park destination in the world.
Yes, I guess it's most popular through being most visited. So that's
Yes.
somehow
That's
it's maybe not everyone's favorite, but it's the most visited and photographed.
all right. Well, there it is. And Dan's going to take us on a walk through it. So, Dan, go ahead and get us started.
Very good. Well, once again, thanks for being with us tonight, everybody. Dave Detling and I met a few years ago. He had reached out and we had become friends and had kept in touch. And, through the pandemic and since my wife and I have become scrappy entrepreneurs, we're connecting with lots of people, which has been fantastic. People we wouldn't have connected with otherwise, because as you all know, Disney's a pretty insulated place. You have to register all the people you talk to from the outside. No, I'm only kidding, but it's a very insulated place. So when we first, I left Disney about 3 years ago. This May will be 3 years, and Valerie and I started our own consulting company, and we've been creating material and just kind of telling our story. We're still on this really learning journey after being with a big corporate, a Fortune 500 company for so long. And it has been great. And so I'll put a lot of the artwork and the details of this presentation to my wife. She's very detail oriented. And when we were first kicking this off, we decided to create some webinars during the pandemic. And one concept, and I won't take you through it, but this had developed over time. And we talked to various people and ideas came together. And someone had said, what if we did something called a walk in the park? What if you can combine the Magic Kingdom with some of the leadership principles and leadership stories and that mirror your book into one story? And so today we're going to do some of that. I'm going to take you around the Magic Kingdom and share various themes of How's the Culture in Your Kingdom, which is a book my wife and I wrote and came out in August of 2020. And some of the leadership learnings and management learnings I had along the way and some of the principles here. And so I'm going to take you through the park, and then at the end we'll do some Q&A. And Jody is, he's the ultimate MC. And so as you all go through the presentation, if you have questions, put them in the chat or save them for the end, and we'll have a conversation. And I love sharing this stuff. It is really fun, and I'm really passionate about it. And once again, so glad you all are interested in this. We're going to start on Main Street USA, which is, everyone comes through Main Street USA. As we like to talk about, it's the 200% of the park attendance goes through Main Street. 100% go in Main Street and 100% come out Main Street. And so it's a real important area. Here's a couple photos we dug up. This is my first full-time job at Disney back in 1991, parking cars at Epcot. A lot has changed except the costume. If you go there today, I think they still have the same costume. And the trams have changed, and I've gotten a bit older along the way. But those were some pretty white sneakers. That was a big standard at Disney. You had to have your white sneakers. And then, as Jody mentioned, through 19 jobs, eventually, I've spent 3 years as vice president of Magic Kingdom before leaving the company. And this is the book that we put out August of 2020. As I like to tell people, you can see my boss there, Mickey Mouse. He looks very friendly. His ears are very soft, but he demands his quarterly earnings. So today's presentation is going to be not only about leadership, but also management and delivering results. And I think that's something I learned at Disney over time is, some companies, results are the only thing that matters. Some companies put, the experience is the only thing that matters. But at the end of the day, the reality is you have to manage a company, create a great atmosphere, a great culture for people to work in, a great environment. and you have to be able to get results. And that's, if you can deliver both of those, you'll have a very successful company. You'll be a very successful leader. So I'm going to take you clockwise through the park. Walt Disney, when he designed the Magic Kingdom, it was very innovative. It was this hub and spoke idea. You're going to come into the park, and then you're going to be able to choose your own adventure. You're going to decide where you go. Up until then, a lot of the carnivals that he had encountered, it was kind of like Las Vegas. You'd go in and they get you confused. They'd try to keep you in there as long as they could. And there wasn't a lot of logic to it. And he knew that when you can create structure and create a storyline to follow, we're just more comfortable. We have a better experience when we know where we're going and we know what the design is. We know how to get back to the center and go on our next adventure. So this was, once again, it seems like a very logical thing now, but at the time, it was very innovative, and the theme park was innovative. Up until then, theme parks didn't exist, and Walt's desire to go beyond animation and create a place that people could be immersed in a story, not only for the immersion piece of it, to step into his films and tell a story, but he wanted a clean, family-oriented place where families could create memories together. And I think one of the successes of the Walt Disney Company has been they've never sort of stepped away from that original goal in the 1955. And it just looks different today. The technology is different. How that's delivered is different. But having people have experiences together and have these emotional connections and get emotional connection with a company is one of the reasons I think it's been successful over the years. So, you think about Main Street USA, it's where their guests get ready for the day. This is where they pick up their strollers, their maps, their suntan lotion, their Mr. Fans. They're excited. They're making their plans for the day. They get their cup of coffee as they're headed in. This is kind of my first point around leadership. And it's possibly one of the most important, because if you don't focus on this, nothing else can happen. As a leader, you have to prepare. You have to be ready for life. You have to be ready for your job. You have to be ready for your family. And the way I like to call this is you have to be fit to lead. It all starts with yourself. And a lot of leaders take this for granted, or we're raised thinking we always have to sacrifice ourselves first, and then go out and then take care of everyone else and worry about ourselves. But 26 years at Disney, I really learned, and growing up being an athlete, I learned that your personal fitness is the most important thing. Not only because you'll last longer and you'll enjoy life much more, but if you don't take care of yourself, all the people that you're supposed to take care of, maybe the employees you're leading, your family, your spouse, your kids, your parents, you're not going to be able to take care of them either. I like to compare it to an airbag coming down on an airplane. They always say, you always put it on yourself before helping others, because you need to be in a situation where you can perform before you're going to help other people. And that plays out in many different ways. In fact, the training at Disney, we have for those of you familiar with the theme park and hotel industry, we always have a position called the duty manager. And the duty manager is like sort of a tactical on-scene person responsible for the park operation at any given moment. If you want to find out who's running the park, you call the duty manager, and there's a duty manager from before the park opens till after the park closes. And they are there to manage any crisis that might come up, any guest situations that elevate, ambulances, you name it, the duty manager is the focus point for the park. And we used to do lots of various tabletop exercises and live exercises around crisis management. What if a tornado hit the park? What if we have an active shooter in the park? What if an attraction, we have an accident? And we play these out, we practice these things. And invariably in the simulations we do, the duty manager goes right into the middle of the situation, and the person doing the simulation always has them get injured or killed. And it's a lesson for everybody. If you're the duty manager, you need to get away from the situation to a safe point where you can manage from. And so this plays out again, it's not intuitive. And a lot of times at Disney, you're trained, go help, go jump in to help. And that's true most of the time, but there's situations you're not supposed to go and help. The best you can do is take care of yourself so you can manage that situation. So when Valerie and I were putting the book together, we came upon this and talked about this, what it means to lead yourself. And we came, and I'm going to present that to you. But the editor, they suggested that we put all this lead self stuff at the back of the book. They said, Dan, you're writing a leadership and a management book. And when people start reading this book, they're going to say, it feels like a self-help book. I was looking for management and leadership principles from Disney, and you're telling me that I have to exercise and I have to eat right. This has nothing to do with that. And so we sort of pushed back and said, no, we want it to be at the beginning of the book, because if we put it at the back of the book, we're going to do what most people do with their lives. They push back. They're taking care of themselves. So there's really 4 areas that I like to talk about when it comes to leading self. The first one is the one that's most obvious. And people say, I've had people say, why do you even spend time on that, Dan? We all know we're supposed to stay fit. We all know we're supposed to get exercise. But the problem is, in today's world, with all the remote work happening and all the technology, I was talking to someone today, back in my day, that's when you know you're getting old, when you can say back in your day. Back in my day, I had a Chevy Impala, and if you wanted to roll the window up and down, you had to do it manually, and you got some exercise. And back in my day, if you wanted to go in a building, you just didn't hit the exit button, open door button. You had to open the door all the time, and you had to take the stairs. And so there's all these things that over time we've just lost, just because society has evolved. And you hear about people in these green zones, or I think they're called green zones, around the world, that tend to have a much higher life expectancy. And in Europe and some of the countries, that's the case. And they've written it to many reasons, but one reason is people get physical activity. A lot of people there don't have cars. They have to walk to where they're going to go. And there's exercises built into their life. And so I would call this an epidemic, the fact that we aren't doing as much of this now. Ben Franklin said, when the well is dry, we know the worth of water, right? You don't think about your health until you don't have it. You don't think about water until you don't have it. You don't think about oxygen until you don't have it. And all of a sudden, it's pretty important. So as I've gotten older, I realized not to take this for granted. And I'll tell you a little story. If we go back just about a little over a year, 2 weeks ago, my wife and I we were in Peru working for a company, and we got back. We went to Clearwater Beach, and I was doing a speech over there. And I went down to go swimming that morning before the speech. And I came back to the room, and Valerie said, "Wow, that was a pretty quick workout. You didn't really give it your all today." I said, "Well, I got 20 laps in, and I felt this pain right here, and my left arm felt weird." And she was like, "What's going on?" I said, "Well, it's the second time it's happened, but it's only when I exercise." So, of course, the moral of the story, I'll give you the spoiler: listen to your wife or listen to your spouse. So we went, after that speech, I went directly to a health clinic. If you want to get to the front of the line at a clinic, tell them you have chest pain, get you to the front every time. Now, once you get in, it has to be true. But I went there. The next day, I went to a cardiologist. The next day, I did a stress test. And then 72 hours later, I was getting a catheterization. They put a line through my wrist to go see what was going on. Because we're pretty fit. We eat right. There was really no reason I should have an issue. It turned out my LED artery, the one that they call it the widowmaker, that gives blood to your heart, was 95% blocked. And they put a stent in, they opened it up, and I was running 2 days later. That's the magic of medicine. But I was literally probably days from just dropping dead, because I had spent, after I left Disney, I'd spent a couple of years busy. I hadn't gotten a full physical recently. And just within that very small period of time, I'd gotten plaque building up. And I've always had high cholesterol. And I knew that someday I'd be on some kind of statin. I just didn't know it was going to be that quickly. So once again, it can happen to anybody. Medicine is incredible. And men are mostly the problem. Men will just ignore it. If I'm not feeling bad, why would I go to a doctor? I don't want them messing with me. It's a big mistake. And it's not only a mistake to you, but it's a mistake to your family and all the people who are counting on you. So once again, I'm not going to preach to you about physical fitness, and you don't have to be a triathlete. You don't, to go take a walk around the block. Take a stroll, listen to a book. You don't, like I said, you don't have to be a super athlete. You just got to get your heart rate up, because humans are supposed to have their heart rate up at some point during the day. That's how we evolved. Moving on to the next one, mental fitness. So we talked about physical fitness, and I didn't get into that, but you got to get enough sleep. You got to eat right. As my trainer used to tell me, Dan, you know what the best kind of sandwich is? Half a sandwich. So I've always remembered that. Just eat smaller portions, and it takes some discipline. Mental fitness is the next one. A big part of this is just having the right mindset. And as I've gone through my life, once again, having been an athlete and then working in pretty high stress jobs, this is such an important piece. And I love the book. I'll make a recommendation here. Carol Dweck, and she does a great TED Talk. If you don't want to buy the book, Carol Dweck, Dweck, and she wrote a book called Mindset. And it's based on very previous psychology studies. But she laid out, there's two kinds of mindsets. There's a growth mindset and there's a fixed mindset. And it's not only learning what they are, but starting to translate those concepts into your everyday life. That's where a lot of people get educated. But going from having an idea in your head to actually delivering it through actions and behaviors, that's where the most successful people get there. So a lot of people understand they're supposed to be fit, but they don't work out. They're supposed to eat right, but they eat bad food. They're supposed to get enough sleep, but they don't. So it's actually following through and after you understand these things. And the growth mindset basically says you should take every opportunity to learn. You should embrace challenges. The world is changing very quickly, and your ability to keep up and to succeed is going to be your ability to learn and to adapt. What you know today is only going to get you through the next few weeks, and then it's going to keep evolving. And you got to be in that mindset. And humans aren't built for that. We're built for being stable and knowing what the truth is. And it takes a lot of energy to keep changing and keep learning and keep adapting. But it's such an important piece. So I'm going to give you some behaviors between people who have a fixed mindset versus people who have a growth mindset. So people with a fixed mindset, they believe that intelligence and talent are fixed. It's kind of wired into me. Whatever I have is all I have, and I can't improve upon myself. So I just got to use what I have. Effort is fruitless. I can make efforts, but if I'm not naturally wired to be able to do certain things, I shouldn't even try. People with a fixed mindset will even avoid challenges, because when you take on a challenge, there's always a chance you're going to fail. And people with a fixed mindset hate failure because they let failure define who they are. They don't see it as a moment in time and a learning opportunity. They let it define themselves. And it's not a very healthy way to look at things. They will ignore feedback. They don't want feedback. It's kind of like as they say, the emperor has no clothes. I'm going to pretend I'm doing okay. You pretend I'm doing okay. And we don't have to have any conflict here. Versus people with a growth mindset who say, lay it on me. Let me know from your point of view, what you think I can improve upon, which is a very healthy thing to do. They take feedback as personal criticism. They're threatened by other people's success. I'm not going to help you because if you're more successful than I am, it makes me look bad. They'll hide their flaws. They'll go out of their way to not take on certain situations because they don't want people to know their weaknesses, and they let failure define them. And I'll tell you, we've all had moments or lots of moments over time where we've been in a fixed mindset mode. And I've been in that situation. Even today under pressure, I get in that. I don't like critical feedback. I like people telling me I'm doing really good and that was a great speech. I don't like when my wife tells me it was good, but do you want to hear 5 things that could make it better? And intellectually, I say yes. Emotionally, I say no. So I need to keep fighting that because we get defensive. And once again, especially men, because we have this ego that's a problem. So then you talk about people with growth mindset. Intelligence and talent can be developed. You may not be world-class at everything, but you can learn pretty much, if you put your mind to it, you can learn a lot more and become a lot better at whatever you're going to focus on. Effort is a pathway to mastery. You can't just get to mastery. You're going to have to, there's a path that's going to be there. And if you can embrace the journey and enjoy the journey, enjoy the failures, but know you're getting a little bit better every day, that is a growth mindset. Failures are temporary. You know what? That didn't work out, but I'm going to get up tomorrow and I'm going to do a little bit better next time around. This is a temporary situation. All I can do is I can't change the past, but I can improve the future. People with a growth mindset embrace challenges. When the boss says, I got this really dirty, bad job, who wants to take it? The people with growth mindsets are like, I'll take it. I want to learn it. I want to see if I can conquer this thing. And the people with fixed mindsets think they're kind of not very smart to take on those, but they embrace those challenges. They welcome feedback. They're always looking for feedback because they know they have blind spots. They know that they're not always getting the whole story. When I was leading some of the parks, people are very nice to me. They smile and everything's good. I know that's not the truth. I think there are problems. So as a leader, you have to dig beneath the surface and find out how you can get better. Other people's success inspire them. They see failure as an opportunity to learn for next time, and mistakes are just part of learning. And it's not personal. It's just the way you kind of get things done. So I would highly, if you want to, learn more about this, just put it in front of you and just put a little thing on your computer or your wall. Have a growth mindset and put some of those behaviors, because you can actually short circuit your normal reaction, pause, and choose a different reaction if you're conscious about it. And it's hard to do, but that's how we get better as leaders. Quoting Jack Sparrow, the problem is not the problem is your attitude about the problem. And your attitude about a problem is usually it. Almost every problem can be solved, but often people's attitude gets in the way of them not being able to do that. Next one is moral fitness. I think about this as moral fitness. It's like having a compass that guides you through decision making. You just need to know what your values are. What do you value? What are the things that are important to you? And how do you connect your values with your behaviors? And it's as simple as that. Because when you have clear values, decision making gets so much easier, and hard decisions get so much easier because you know what your values are. So a couple of examples I'll share with you. When I was laying out my values, how I make my decisions, I call them 3 buckets. There's 3 things I have to do well regularly to be able to be happy in my life. The first one is lead myself. And I define that as exercise. If I exercise and I'm fit, I'm just so much more confident. I feel better about myself. I have more stamina. And so when I was working at Disney, I had to get up really early to get that in, because there was no time during the day to exercise. At the end of the day, I was burnt. There's no way I was going to the gym after work. So my choice was to get up early and go run or swim. Now, in order to do that, I had to go to bed early because I needed a lot of sleep. I think they say intelligent people need less sleep. So that said something about my sleep habits. I needed at least 8 hours to operate. And so I went to bed at 8, 9 o'clock every night so I could get up at 5 the next morning to have time to do that. So it's about when you have these values, you just have to start making sacrifices and trade things off. And so I was number 1. Number 2 is my family and my friends. So my values were there. And so, when I got up in the morning, did I empty the dishwasher? Did I take the trash out? When one of the kids got in trouble, did I back up my wife and make sure instead of being passive? Did I call my mom and check in on her? When the kids said, "Can you read me a bedtime story?" Did I skip a few pages, or did I actually read the whole book because I was tired that night? So you're always making choices. Every day you're making choices. And family, friends, I had to align my behaviors with that. And lastly was my career. What choices was I making to be the best I could be at work? And that was preparing, that was studying, learning new things, learning new ways to solve problems, being vulnerable. So those were basically, when I think about values, every day I had a scorecard in my mind. Did I take care of myself today? So for today, I got a 0 because I got up early this morning and I've had Monday was back to back, and I'm not going to get out and run today. So 0, failure. When it came to family and friends, my daughter and her boyfriend are coming over for dinner tonight. My wife and I had a major disagreement this morning on something, so I'll give myself 50% credit for today, maybe 25%. And then when it comes to work, I got a ton of work done today, and hopefully this webinar is going to go well. So maybe I get a 1. So maybe today's a 1.25 out of 3, and that's a great day. So once again, figure out what your values are and decide how you're actually bringing those to life through your behaviors. And then the last piece of leading self that we thought was really important is, we call it organizational fitness. You may know it by another name called time management, how to organize your life. This is one that it's kind of like physical fitness. Everyone knows they're supposed to be organized and anticipate, but a lot of us are in moments where we don't do it right. And it causes a lot of stress in our lives, and it causes us to get off track. So one of the tools that I really enjoy is the Eisenhower matrix. And the way the Eisenhower matrix is laid out on the x-axis, it talks about things that are urgent. And basically something that's urgent has immediate consequence if it's not dealt with. And something that's not urgent does not have an immediate consequence. And importance, I like to define as something that is going to be a major factor in your life. It's going to make a difference in your life. So whether if I eat today, if I have a nice vegetarian meal, I go to McDonald's, that's really not an important decision, because over that one decision is not going to make a difference in my life. But over time, you got to think about these important things. And so obviously, once you lay out those 4 quadrants, you start to define what activities you spend on and where you should be spending them. So I'll start with the upper right, important and urgent. And this is where we spend most of our time, right? You get a call, hey, we have a customer, they're really mad, a guest is yelling, they found a handgun in the park, we have 2 dopies, this is a problem, they're not 2 dopies, so we got to get on that. You're responding to things that are coming up. Sometimes they're because you didn't plan. Important and urgent is cramming for the exam the night before because you didn't maybe take time to study for it. And most of the time, important and urgent is stuff that's beyond your control. It's your boss calling saying, I need this report by tomorrow because I forgot about it. Now it's your problem. So the idea here is you need to plan for the unpredictable. The way I thought about it was I would not overcommit my calendar when I was working in theme parks. A lot of leaders, they have back-to-back meetings to get all the work done. And then when someone texts them or emails them or calls them about an emergency, their whole day gets interrupted because they got to go deal with this. And the reality is being interrupted and dealing with issues is usually our job. All the other stuff is just the stuff to keep the wheels turning. So what I learned over time is keep openings in your calendar so you can respond to things and you don't get off track, and commit to less things over time so you're present in the operation. That's a big thing with leaders. You need to be around. Setting expectations and then monitoring from afar is not leadership. And so you got to figure out how to think about that. Now, this is where the gold is: important and not urgent. This is, for those of you who are in your 20s, this is opening up a 401k. This is opening up a Roth IRA and start saving now. Because at this point, if you're in your 20s, your life expectancy is most likely over 100 with the way technology and healthcare and everything is progressing. So the idea is you basically have, 60 or 70 years of compounding interest. Retirement, saving for retirement is important to you, but it is not urgent. It's much more urgent for Jody and I and Dave because we're older. Generally, I didn't see everyone on the screen, but we're close to retirement. So if you don't take care of this stuff, it becomes important and urgent. Stuff like this is getting exercise so you don't have a heart attack. Stuff like this is reading books to your kids when they're little so they get a love for reading. So when they become students, they're able to take on the workload. These are things that we usually don't do because they're not urgent and we let other things get in the way. So what I've learned over time is you have to schedule time to think about these things. You need to take time to think about, as my parents get older, how are we going to take care of them? Am I going to have enough money for retirement? Am I thinking about the future? And you need to block time to think about this. If you don't have a financial advisor, get a financial advisor, start saving, and they can do all these models for you. And they can tell you how much money you're going to have at a certain age. And most people are so intimidated by that and don't want to think about, I remember when I was 21, I'm like, I'm never going to be 52. I don't have to worry about that. That's forever. And here I am, 52. It happens. So this is important to think about, and you should schedule time. I used to schedule time once a month for a half day on my calendar. It just said think time, and it was blocked. It was a meeting. No one would take that time away from me, and it was an opportunity for me to go think about how am I doing with myself? How am I doing with my family? How am I doing at work? Are there behaviors or routines I should change to get better? And it's just a time to reflect. We just don't reflect anymore. We just go, go, go. And then, obviously I didn't get into boxes, things that are not important, not urgent. You may spend a little time there, but don't spend a lot of time because they're not worth much. It may be maybe a blow off some steam playing Candy Crush, but it's certainly not important. It's not urgent. And then you have these things that have a high urgency and low importance. And these are things that people put on you. You don't know how to say no. You haven't set up your credit card for auto pay. So you got to go do these things that are urgent. They're going to have an impact, but they really don't matter. So can you delegate these things? Can you automate these things? Can you push them out of your life so you're only focused on important and not urgent and important and urgent kind of things? And there's a ton of material online if you want to learn more about this. Heading into Adventureland. Now we're getting into a little bit of a leading team. And these are all explorers you may recognize. Sir Edmund Hillary, Neil Armstrong, Jacques Cousteau, Magellan, Amelia Earhart. They're all adventurers, but they had one thing in common. They had great teams to support them. We remember their names, but we don't remember the names of the teams. but they didn't do anything by themselves. They had an incredible team around them. They knew how to put people who were talented around them. In fact, Magellan never completed his journey around the world. He died in the Philippines, and Elcano, his second, made it back to Spain. But you never hear about Elcano because he was the one, but he had a team that was able to take care of this. So as in a leadership role at Disney, as I got bigger and bigger responsibilities, I realized more and more how important it was to have the right people around me, because I didn't have enough hours in the day. I didn't have enough intelligence. I didn't have enough experience to be able to do all the things a team could do for me. And so I had to start thinking of, how do I fill in the gaps? How do I get the people who are going to think about things I'm not thinking about? How am I going to get people to see the blind spots? How am I going to get people who are smarter than me that are going to come up with suggestions to make better decisions? Because as a leader, your job is not to get things done. Your job is to make sure things get done. And there's a big difference between those two things. And it's a big step a lot of leaders struggle with, is going from being self-reliant to counting on others to get things done for them. You got to trust people. You need to learn how to delegate, let go. There's a lot that comes with that. So one of my favorite quotes, African proverbs, if you want to go fast, you go alone. And if you want to go far, you go together. And I saw this happen all the time at Disney. Sometimes my ego got the best of me, and I tried to go fast and left everyone behind. And then I got stuck out on this island. And then the legal department called and said, you should have called us. You didn't think about this. Or the operations group called, and all of a sudden I'm like, why didn't I take everyone with me? I can't go do this by myself. But once again, your ego gets the best of you. So if you in today's world, you have to learn how to collaborate with people, because it's just too complex to figure out how to do things on your own. So when I think about the power of teams, when you're thinking about people you want to associate yourself with, and this is not just for work necessarily, this is just, I think, in life. If you can put diverse people around you that have different talents, different points of views, different experiences than you do, your learning is going to accelerate. The thing is, we all have confirmation bias, right? When we interview people, we're more comfortable with people that talk like us and look like us and sound like us. And when they walk out, we're like, wow, I like that person. Well, yeah, you do. They're like you. So you got to figure out, who are the people who are asking questions that make you feel uncomfortable? Who are the people you have to have a conversation with before you understand, because you don't have that same background? Those are the people you need to have on your team, because those are the people who are going to help you innovate. They're going to show you new possibilities. I saw this happen in person when I was, in the parks. I was an operations guy, and for years, to be a vice president of a park, you had to grow up in operations, because you knew the terrain, you knew how to operate, and that's what you needed. And then all of a sudden, the company started bringing in people who had been industrial engineers or people who had been in business development. And they started asking questions in the meetings. And I'm like, oh boy, I better catch up. I didn't even know you could ask that question. I always thought about the business in a certain way. And when you get a guy that ran the San Francisco Transit Authority and has come in and now runs Epcot, he's asking questions. And I'm like, wow, that's a whole different point of view. And the value add was just unbelievable. And so these were people who had an analytical point of view, and they had this operations leadership point of view. And it was just, not only were the answers interesting, but just even asking the questions was interesting. Power of teams, giving everyone the opportunity to express themselves. There's a bunch of different things here. As a leader, you have to make sure you're listening to everyone. It's easy not to. First of all, people who don't agree with you are usually not going to tell you unless you invite them to. When you tell everyone in a meeting, I have an idea, what do you think? And you're nodding, everyone's going to say, yeah, that sounds like a pretty good idea. As a leader, you have to challenge everyone and find out what's wrong with your idea. Get them to speak up. As I like to say, encourage constructive criticism. And that doesn't work well at Disney. I mean, you have to I didn't specifically in meetings tell people, for the next 10 or 15 minutes, we're only going to talk about why this is a terrible idea. And everyone has to participate. And you would be surprised how many great ideas we had that we just shelved, because after talking about it for 15 minutes, we're like, all right, it sounded good, but now that we've talked about it, probably not a good way to go. The other thing to understand is, introverts and extroverts. And I think, a lot of times people say, well, yeah, introverts are shy. They don't express themselves. Introverts aren't shy. They just like to process information. And so I had to specifically know who my introverts were on my team, because the extroverts, they always have an answer right away when you ask a question. So I was always looking for the introverts at the end of the conversation. Hey, Steve, what do you think about this? And there'd be a silence, and he'd say something incredibly dramatic, and they're like, Steve, I know you had that idea. He goes, well, I thought everyone already said what I was thinking, so I didn't want to add anything else. You have to pull it out of people. And as a leader, it's easy to watch the shiny object, the person who speaks up all the time, but you got to listen to everybody. There's another process we used that we're now actually teaching other companies to use. We call it feedback and action planning. And so this is a great approach. You go and you can do a survey in advance and find out what people think about leadership. But even if you don't have time for that, everyone at Disney did this. This is a big best practice we use. You bring your whole team in a room, you put 3 flip charts, and you say, okay, guys, I'm going to leave for a couple hours. I want you all to tell me what I should start doing, what I should stop doing, and what I should continue doing. And I'll be back in a couple hours. And so they elect a leader from the team. Everyone gets to brainstorm, and there's safety in numbers. So no one's out on an island, like, who said what. The group agrees on it. And as a leader, you come back and they tell you, all right, Dan, we talked about either what you should start, stop, and continue doing, or what we think the team should stop, start, continue doing, running this park or this hotel. And it was incredible. And so you have to have a thick skin. You have to be ready to deal with it. The best thing to do, if you get the feedback, you got to follow through. If you're going to have the feedback and action planning and not follow through, don't even do it to begin with, because you're just going to have less credibility than you had to begin with. But you got to be ready to hear what people say. So I'll give you an example. I'm big on consensus. I keep my mind open all the time. When I did my Myers-Briggs, I never like to close a decision, because I always think there's another better decision to make. That's a problem in operations, because sometimes you just got to say, look, this is all the information we have. We got to make a decision. And I would always keep the door open. So the team told me, they said, Dan, you let decisions go way too long. You need to raise your hand, pull out your vice president card and say, we're done with the conversation. This is the decision. And I started to do that. And because I didn't want to be that guy. I didn't want to be the one. They said, no, you listen to us, and we need you sometimes. We're never going to agree on an issue at sometimes. You need to decide and tell us what to do. And so you'll get some incredible feedback from your team. It builds trust. It makes them better. It helps you learn how to lead them better, because the better they do their job, the better results you get as a leader. So feedback and action planning, very valuable. Another thing, I'm going to get into is this idea at the Magic Kingdom, and this kind of in Frontierland. We lost a little bit sort of our adventure here, but Frontierland, attention to detail. Once again, extremely important, and everything you do in any company and for yourself. People notice details. Disney takes care of the details. If you're the hospitality industry, detail is very important. People notice small things. One thing I'll give you as something simple and straightforward and extremely boring: checklists. Having a checklist. And some people say, well, checklist, I don't want to be that, that person who's so detail oriented. Get a checklist. I have a checklist on my phone. I use Evernote for a lot of my stuff. And every time I travel, I pull out the Evernote travel checklist, and I just check off everything. Do I have my underwear? Do I have a dress shirt? Do I have a tie? Do I have a belt? Do I have my running shorts? Do I have socks? Do I have my deodorant, my toothpaste? Every time I do my checklist, and I end up at the hotel and I have everything I need because I have a checklist. Everything, it's easy to not use checklists, because usually what we do is very repetitive. And when you go to work every day, I don't need a checklist. I know this in my head. That's when trouble starts. And I'll tell you a story about that in a couple minutes. Something else that I think is very unique at Disney are quality standards. And for those of you who have worked at Disney or studied Disney, I'm sure you know what the quality standards are. We call them the 4 keys. And they really, I think, set Disney apart from a lot of the competition, because we have standard operating guidelines or standard operating procedures at Disney. You have to have a manual that says how the place is supposed to operate, every attraction, every restaurant. But the problem or the issue is, in operations, there's lots of decisions that have to be made every day that don't end up in an SOP, because you have a guest who has a situation that's not something we didn't think about. And instead of trying to write this encyclopedia of answers that no one's ever going to remember, it's much better. Give people criteria on how to make decisions, and then let them make the decisions on their own. And for me, this is one of the biggest well-known secrets of how great companies run. They have very clear quality standards. So the first day you go to Disney, you go to traditions. And the first day in traditions, you learn about the 4 keys. And you learn on the first day about safety, courtesy, show, and efficiency. And even if you haven't been to your job yet, by the time you walk out at the end of the day, you know that safety is the one non-negotiable. You never put yourself in an unsafe situation. You never put a coworker in an unsafe situation or a guest. And even if you're not trained yet, if you have an unsafe situation, you can do whatever it takes to fix that situation, get out of that safety moment. You can sacrifice courtesy. You can sacrifice the show. You can sacrifice efficiency because safety is it. Next, courtesy. Be nice to people. Next is the show. Wear your name tag. Don't be texting while you're out on stage. Wear the right color shoes. Everything's part of the show. And lastly is efficiency. And efficiency comes last because efficiency always wants to be first. Everyone wants to always do things faster and more efficiently and cheaper. And what we said is efficiency is still important, but it can't be at the expense of safety, courtesy, and show. So I'll give you a quick example. If you're a new cast member and you're working at the Haunted Mansion, and you go to get on the Haunted Mansion, and you see a family, and the grandmother's with them, and she looks like maybe the moving sidewalk's going to be a little bit of a problem. That employee, that cast member, doesn't have to call a manager and ask if they should slow the attraction down or stop the attraction. They know in that moment, they've been trained. If that person could fall down, we have to slow it down or stop it. What does that do? Well, the courtesy goes out the window because you've interrupted everything that's going on. People aren't happy about that. You've sacrificed the show because the loudspeaker comes on the attraction. Please stand by. The attraction could move at any moment. And you certainly sacrificed efficiency because it's not moving anymore. But we told our employees that's okay because safety comes first. So this is a big deal. And I'll tell you, for those of you who are working and don't use this in your jobs, if you just bring this back and talk and create this in your own departments, you'll take a big step forward. Because not only what it does is it creates clarity, but it empowers people to make decisions. That's what most people get worried about. I'm empowering you, but I haven't given you the tools of how to make the decision. And so I say you're empowered, but then you're like, what does that mean? Like, you mean I can give away $1,000, $2,000? You mean I can stop the attraction? I need to know what that means. And that's what quality standards do for you. So checklists, clear quality standards, and then this idea of defining the behaviors that support the quality standards. In safety and food and beverage, it's wash your hands and keep the kitchen floor dry. In accounting or HR, it's protect your passwords and make sure you keep files confidential. Safety and attraction is make sure you use the right hand signs when you're dispatching vehicles. It changes from business to business, and each department has to define what safety, courtesy, show, and efficiency means to them. Because sometimes a lot of the employees at Disney don't even see guests. They're serving other cast members, but they're still held accountable to the 4 keys. So they have to treat the cast members the same way they want the guests to be treated in the parks. And then these couple others here, attention to detail. Detail all the processes, each interaction. This is clarity. When I worked in hotels, the greeter should be standing within, we had this thing called the magic box. And a greeter should be in the box because when you're in the box, it means no guest can come in or out of the hotel with running into you. And then you would greet them. It's incredible. You stand 3 feet to the side and all of a sudden you're visible. And now there's no greeting happening. So you got to be very specific about what you want your people to say and how that interaction should play out. And then lastly, the what ifs. What are all the what ifs? You got to prepare for the what ifs. What if we had a fire? What if someone fell down? What if this happens? And prepare for those because the what ifs always come up. And you got to train your people to be ready. Something I've learned the past few years, unfortunately, what if you're in an office building and an active shooter comes? And I watched a video and I know it says hide, run, fight. Those are the or run, hide, fight. And I know what that term is. If there's an active shooter, you should run first. If you can't run, hide. If you can't hide, you fight in that order. And that's how you prepare people for really tough situations in your operations. I'll tell you a quick story about attention to detail. I can't believe I found this picture. This was probably from 2006 on Christmas Day at the Magic Kingdom. And in Frontierland, the toilet started to back up, and then the kitchen, Pecos Bill, started to back up. And we had to close down Frontierland because sewage was coming out onto the walkway. And so, and on the busiest day of the year. And so we called maintenance, and we called an outside company, and they couldn't get this thing to unblock. So this guy who's coming out went down into there. These are frozen, or these are congealed oil logs from the fryers. So we had hired an outside company a year and a half before to clean the kitchens, and we had not checked on the detail of what the process was. We never checked how they were disposing of the oil. They were pouring the oil down the water drains. And over time that built up. And on Christmas Day, when you're busy and all the sinks are running, all the toilets are being flushed, it overloaded the system. And we had to cancel the parade that day just because we hadn't paid attention to who was cleaning the kitchens on third shift. So there's consequences. If you don't pay attention to details, they play out in this way. And it can be very impactful. So, as we like to talk about a lot of this stuff, these are all very simple concepts. Stay fit, get enough sleep, manage your time, pay attention to details, lead your team. These are all simple concepts, not easy to execute. That's what makes them, hard. So easy to understand, hard to do. The most important things in life are. I want to show you a quick, Liberty Square is actually my favorite land at the Magic Kingdom. I want to show you this. You may notice on the, if you ever go to, and some of you may know about this, but if you ever go to Liberty Square, all the shutters and all the buildings are crooked. And if you look closely, and it really bugs people, but it's actually part of the show. Because back in 1776 during the war, there was a lack of metal to make bullets for the muskets. And so they would take the hinges off of the shutters to use for bullets, and they'd put leather straps to hold the shutters up. And over time, the leather straps would stretch and everything would get crooked. So when you talk about attention to detail, that's one of my favorite stories. And then the other thing is this little river. There's this gravel thing that runs right through Frontierland or Liberty Square. And it's actually all the sewage, because back in that day, you'd go out and get your bucket of all your stuff and dump it into the street. And we reproduce that without the smell or any of the other nasty parts of that. So that's a little bit about Frontierland. So a quick quiz for you that's going to show another example of safety and an example of attention to detail. How many guests go through Big Thunder Mountain approximately every year? So the choices are 850,000, 6.1 million, 3.2 million, or 1.7 million. And I don't have a poll set up here, but if you look at it for a minute, the answer is 6.1 million guests on average every year carried on Big Thunder Mountain. So if you think about attention to detail, think about this. At 99.99% perfection, 99.99% of the guests who ride Thunder Mountain ride it safely every year. That means we're going to have 610 accidents on Big Thunder Mountain this year because we're at 99.99% perfection. So that gives you an idea of how important detail is and how important safety is, because I'm sure you all know if there's one accident in Disney park, it's national news. So that's the level you have to operate at, and the level of detail, the level of operations you have to be at. Want to jump a little bit and talk about another theme here, vision. You hear this from a lot of companies. There's the vision and the mission, and everyone puts it up on the wall, and no one can remember what it is. The vision for a company, we call it the aspirational goal for the organization. What do you want to be 5 or 10 years down the road? And usually it's the CEO of the company who decides what the vision is. And that's all good and fine, and it can get you proud of the company. The vision for the Walt Disney Company has become the most admired company in the world. It's a big goal, and that's what the vision is. The problem with the vision is it doesn't apply to everybody, because if you're coming in every day to sell popcorn, or you're parking cars in the parking lot, or you're a dancer, whatever your job is, connecting being the most admired company in the world to your job, that's a big gap there. And so something we learned at Disney is very effective. We call the shared purpose, or the common purpose. And basically what it is you explain to people, forget about your job. Why do we come in every day? Why do we even exist? What are we trying to do every day? And what we've learned over time is when we train our employees at Disney, we say, look, you may be selling popcorn, but that's your role. But your purpose is to create magic for guests. You may be sweeping the street, but your purpose is to create magic for guests. And when you start telling your employees about a shared purpose, all of a sudden it's in their hands. Everyone gets to participate. And when we first started doing this, some departments would come and say, well, look, I'm a custodial. I don't get to play because we clean the toilets, we clean the bathrooms, and empty the trash cans. We said, no, you participate. You got to figure out how you're going to create magic for guests. And if you've ever been to Walt Disney World any time, you may come across a custodial cast member who puts a bunch of water in a pan and with a broom paints a Mickey Mouse on the pavement or a Donald Duck. That's their moment to create a magical moment. The housekeepers, at the All-Star, 95% of the housekeepers, English was a second language. A lot of them couldn't even talk to the guests and be able to have a conversation. So they came up with towel animals, or they came up with, you come back to your room, your plush is sitting on the couch with a remote control watching a cartoon. You create these magical moments for them. So everyone gets to do this, and any company can do this. It's not just Disney that does this. So what can you do in your business and your jobs to create this memorable experience for your customers? There's lots of different ways to do it. You just have to be creative about it, and it makes work a lot more fun because a lot of the jobs at Disney are very repetitive. And if you don't give people another reason to be there, you can get kind of burnt out. So you need to have some hope here. The other thing I want to share here is this piggy bank. Here's the reality of Disney. Disney goes through your heart on the way to your wallet. So this is not like just being nice. Magic is not just like there for fun. We know when we create these moments for people, they're much more likely to come back. They're much more likely to refer a friend or talk positively about the experience. And that's where we make our money. So not only is this a fun thing to do, it is a great business strategy. And so when I was at the Magic Kingdom, we came up with, we went from saying, what's the shared purpose? Frontierland. What's in Frontierland? Well, you have to go through there to get to Big Thunder Mountain, Splash Mountain, and then there's all these shops, and then there's the Country Bears Jamboree. So Frontierland was kind of a sleepy area. It wasn't working hard enough for us. So we started to brainstorm and talk to the team. We said, okay, we want to make Frontierland the most exciting, best land at the Magic Kingdom, because today it's last. And so we started to brainstorm. We got the team involved, and we started to bring the bears out. But you know what? A bear in a meet and greet line is not fun. But when they're walking around, roaming around, sneaking up behind kids, all of a sudden it's a whole new experience. We created I'm trying to remember this, the Jamboree. Everyone come out and dance a few times a day. The cast members, the entertainment, all the bears. We created these moments where these would happen together. So we created something from nothing, a very small investment. It was the Frontierland Hoedown is what it was called. But we told everyone, how do we make this the most magical land? And all of a sudden, food and beverage had an idea, attractions had an idea, merchandise had an idea, and we all gathered around that and brought the team together and created something that was pretty popular. So this idea, the shared purpose, elevates your service delivery, and it gives your employees relevance. It's a double win here. Not only do employees have fun because they know that they matter, but now they're able to give this great experience to your customers. So as I would tell you all, translate your vision to a common purpose and keep at the forefront of your action and communications every day. Your job is not returning emails. Your job is a lot of things you think your job is. That's simply your role. Your purpose should be something bigger than that, to get your customers to remember why they like dealing with you. A piece of Fantasyland trivia. How does Fantasyland ridership compare to the entire Animal Kingdom park ridership? I'll have the options here. The answer is it's actually bigger now. But when I was there, the amount of guests carried in Fantasyland was the same as the entire Animal Kingdom. So now you can get an idea of why Fantasyland was expanded, because it's such a popular land. And so that sometimes leads us to making improvements. Speaking of Fantasyland, I want to talk about this idea of the chain of excellence. And something we understood at Disney is, and this is one of the insights we like to offer, your front line delivers your bottom line. Your front line, when I was at the Magic Kingdom, when I was at studios, most guests never saw me, didn't know who I was, didn't care who I was. They knew the person in the Auto Plaza they interacted with, the person in the parking lot, the person who let them into the park, the person who sold them a cup of coffee, the person that loaded in the attraction. They had these hundreds of interactions with those people. And based on those experiences, they decided if they had a great experience or not. So you always have to keep thinking about this, because when you get to a certain level in organization, you get in this really nice meeting room and talk about all these things, but nothing's happened yet. You got to go out and actually bring these experiences to life for people. So chain of excellence. If you don't remember anything else from today's presentation, this is the key takeaway, because this is how I think about everything I did at Disney and everything we do now running our own company. And this is by the Harvard Business Review. So not our original idea, but the idea of every company is to create sustainable results. Sustainable results, whether you're a nonprofit, for-profit, you need to get resources to continue to operate. And the way you get sustainable results is you have people come back again and again. The intent to return is high and intent to recommend is high. Those are the two things we measured at Walt Disney World. And every company measures that, because you can buy a pair of Nikes once, but it's better if you buy another pair every couple of years. That's how they grow their business. In order to deliver sustainable results, you have to have customer satisfaction. They have to rate you excellent. And in order to do that, your employees have to be satisfied. And so they need to be trained and know how to operate. What we discovered at Disney is when we talked to our guests, our customers, we said, why do you come here? Why do you keep coming back to Disney? It's incredibly expensive. Like, are you crazy? Keep coming back here. And we said, what do you like? They said, we like the fireworks. We like the buses. We like the hotels. We like the characters. They went on and on and on. We said, yeah, but you can get that at other places. What is it about Disney that differentiates it? And we boiled it down to 4 things. You all treat me as an individual. You make me feel special. You respect me, and you know what you're doing. You're knowledgeable about what you're doing. You give me the right information. When my son is at the California Grill, one of your nicest restaurants, and wants chicken fingers, you don't tell me you don't have them. You go figure it out. You go downstairs and get them. When my son is too short to go on an attraction, you don't sacrifice safety, but you give him a pass to come back next time and ride it when he's tall enough. Or you give us extra fast passes to go do a different attraction together as a family. You treat us as individuals. You point out if we have pin lanyards, you talk to us, you comment on our hats. If we have a birthday button on, you make a big deal out of that. That's why we come back. All the stuff you do, we expect. This is what makes it special, and this is what differentiates it. Then we talked to our employees, and we said, why do you stay here? Why do you work at Disney? You know what they told us? The same thing. I'll stay here if you treat me as an individual, you make me feel special, you respect me, and you make me knowledgeable so I can do my job. And once again, this is not a theme park thing. This is not a hotel thing. You can take this back to your businesses, whatever you do. And if you can figure out every day how to treat the people you work with and the people, your customers, as individuals, and give them that little extra energy, and just don't go through the routine, people, they notice that. We have a Starbucks near us, and I got to meet the manager sometime, because every time we go, we pre-order, we do the mobile order, we get to the drive-through. Hey, how are you today? What can we get you? I mean, it's like their first day at work. They're so happy to be there. You pull up, hey, how are you? Here's your coffee. I hope you all have a great day. It's consistent. I'm like, this is not just a one-off employee. The leader's doing something there to take care of people. They're excited to be there. And then you go to other Starbucks, it's good. Hey, here's your coffee. Have a good day. It's not great. And the difference between very good and excellent is like light years apart. I have very good experiences every day. I don't have excellent experiences every day. And if you're in business, if you don't provide excellent experiences, excellent products, you're going to go out of business. Because when you deliver excellence, people aren't going to leave you. They're going to keep coming back. When you deliver very good experiences, they might go try somewhere else because you don't have them locked in. So I talk about this importance of care. And this is a little quote we like, we want our customers to think of us as a company with a heart, but we want our employees to think of our organization as an organization that will chew them up, spit them out, smear them into the carpet if they screw up. And this is how some companies operate. Hey guys, go out and be really nice to our guests and our customers and make them feel special. And if you don't, you're fired. That's not leadership. That's compliance. And as leaders, what we're trying to get is commitment. We're trying to get people commit to enjoy what they're doing. And that's much harder. I'll tell you a quick story about this one. And this is a cultural thing. One day at it was a busy evening at the Magic Kingdom, and the employee cafeteria is right below Fantasyland, the Pinocchio Village House that serves pasta and pizza. And something happened with the sprinkler system in the cafeteria, and they couldn't cook any food. And so the duty manager, who was in charge of the park, had to make a decision. What do I do? There's no food. The cast members have to eat. And so that night, I came in the next morning, I was listening to voicemail, the update, and he said, last night, the kitchen and the main cafeteria for cast members went down. I called, we put out a page across the park, and we fed all the cast at Pinocchio Village House. People came to the kitchen, and we gave them pizzas. And so I called the duty manager the next day. I said, so tell me what happened. He explained it to me. I said, how did you make that decision to give away all this free food to our employees? He said, well, we always talk about how important the cast are. They didn't have a place to eat. And you can hear that it wasn't very nice. You could hear the worry in his voice. Like, well, you made the exact right decision. That's what we should do. But when you have a culture that follows this, people know the right decision to make. That was not a difficult decision to make that day to go ahead and take care of the cast members. So this, the insight here, the quality of care delivered to your guests is directly correlated to the quality of care you provide for your team members. And it's that idea, treat people as you want them to treat others. And it's easy to forget about that as a leader and not say hi to people, not thank them at the end of the day, not give them the support they need. And they're watching you as a leader all the time. And if you don't do this, they're not going to stay, and they're not going to give you their best. Another book I'll recommend, Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I think it came out over 30 years ago, but it is still a classic. And he has a chapter in his book we call the emotional bank account. And the idea is everyone has an emotional bank account. You have it with your spouse, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your kids, your parents. There's a give and take. I help you with something, and tomorrow you're going to help me with something. And there's this exchange going back and forth. You have that employee who says, I got to leave early today. I have a family emergency. You have a choice. As a manager, you can say, you need to stay here. We need you here. Or you can say, you know what, I'm going to let you go. Hope everything's okay. Fast forward 3 weeks later, we're extending park hours tonight. I need you to stay later. I can't stay later. A lot of customers, they're not making that decision because they can't stay later. They remember that you were not flexible with them 3 weeks ago. And so you're always having this exchange back and forth, helping people, and they're helping you and you're helping them. And it's something we do in life. So you want to provide for people's needs and wants, make sure you're taking care of them. Keep track of their personal info. Whenever I met my new general managers, new jobs, I'd find out, tell me about yourself. Where did you work before? Do you have kids? What's your favorite? What do you do on weekends? The more you get to know people, make an investment in them. When you hit hard times, you're going to have a much better relationship. And communicating effectively. The importance of care, communication. Every company we work with now, usually the issues we're helping with is communication. Everyone has great intent. They're just not communicating to the people. They're not telling them what's going on. They're not giving them that respect. It's the same thing as, with your family. You know what? I think my kids know, my wife knows I love them, but I better communicate that effectively. I don't want to assume they know that. And so communication is such a big piece in leadership. And a lot of times you hear people say, I wish I had said that to that person. I wish I told them how much I appreciated that. Don't hold back. Let people know how much you appreciate them, because it really does show you care. And it makes that, that deposit that it's going to come back and help you later. Now, the last chapter here, Tomorrowland, looking and preparing for tomorrow. As Lumiere said, you must be bold and daring. So, preparing for tomorrow, as we were thinking about this, there's some things if you're preparing for the future. And this, I'll tell the story about this, but you talk about, evaluate the use of current assets, right? So if I go back 5 years, there was turnstiles at the Magic Kingdom, and you had to go to a machine to get your fast pass. And we questioned, how do we prepare for tomorrow? Because all the guests that are coming here today, they want to do everything on their cell phone, their device, their smart device. And we said, well, no one else in theme parks is really using it. They said, no, it's not theme parks. It's everything else they're doing in life. They're looking at theme parks saying, everyone has an app. Why don't you have an app? And so we had to start to say, well, how do we take what we're doing today and convert it to what people expect today? And there's a lot of conversation around that. And, the FastPass Plus came to life, and you can book online reservations now, and you can do mobile order on your app. So this idea of constantly looking for a different way. It would have been easy for Disney to say, look, we're Disney. People are coming here anyway. We're not changing what we've done. But that's a problem, because people want their experience delivered differently. This is a whole topic in itself, but this idea of thinking laterally about your business. What if we did X? So I have a couple stories. During the pandemic, there's a pizza place in downtown New York City. Basically overnight, they went from delivering pizzas to they can only sell slices now. And you can't make enough money selling slices. So well, what do we do? How are we going to do this? People can't come into our restaurant anymore. Everyone's locked down. So they brainstormed, and they realized that hospitals needed the protective equipment, and it turns out that their ovens go up to like 800 degrees, which is hot enough to produce these masks. So these pizza places started to make plastic masks. So they totally took themselves out of that and said, okay, what if we went and did this differently? What if we just thought differently about what could happen? And this is what happened when it kind of ironically, it's going away now, but someone said one day, what do you hate most about travel? A lot of guests said, I hate luggage. I got to bring the luggage to the airport and check it in, and I got to go pick it up, and I got to lug it all around. If I didn't have to deal with that, that'd be great. So we started with, what if you could check your bags in at any airport around the United States, and the next time you saw it, it was in your hotel room at Walt Disney World. So we worked on it, and finally we figured it out. You know what? If we mail people a tag and we make a deal with the Orlando International Airport, we'll put them in a separate sorting area, and we'll put them on trucks and deliver them to hotels, and we'll cross-reference them, find out what people's room numbers are, and we figured that out. What if we didn't have turnstiles in the parks? That's impossible. You have to have turnstiles. You can't do it any other way. Well, if you go to Walt Disney World today, you have these. There's no turnstiles. You can go right in with your family. There's no gates to open for strollers and wheelchairs, and the system works. So this idea of what if, it's the two guys that walked out of the bar many years ago and said, you know what, we can never get a cab. What if every car was a cab? That's impossible. Now today you got Uber and Lyft and all these services. So everything's possible. You just got to get yourself out of your normal thinking. Inviting all players to the table. We talked earlier about leading teams and having different perspectives. When you get experts up to the table and non-experts, and you let them talk about an issue, they will come up with so many interesting ideas and solutions that are non-traditional. And if you're an expert, sometimes the biggest sticking point is you're an expert, and you can't undo your expertise. You can't think differently. So you got to find other people who aren't experts, because they're going to ask very simple questions, and you're going to get to better answers. And then this last idea is an important one. If you want to have an organization that's thinking about the future and preparing for tomorrow and being creative, you have to celebrate all ideas and suggestions regardless of merit. Sometimes we only reward people who give the ideas that are good and make us money, or the ideas that we follow through on. And we tell other people, well, that was a bad idea. There is no bad idea, because usually an idea will lead to something else, that leads to something else. And the first time you tell someone they have a bad idea, you're never going to hear a peep from them ever again. You have to celebrate it. You have to, and I would constantly have these conversations with employees in Magic Kingdom. I have an idea, tell it to me. All right, I love the fact you thought of it, but here's 3 things I think could be a problem with that, and here's what they are. So you got to give people their due date, because people want to participate. And even if their ideas can be implemented, they still have to be respected for that. And to prove that there's opportunities all around you, and I'll share one example here. This is the Tomorrowland Terrace. In the background, you can see Main Street USA, and on this side of the photo is Tomorrowland. And right in the middle is the Tomorrowland Terrace. It sat there for years, closed during the slow season and only open on really busy days to serve food. And it was kind of like, we were like, should we just tear it down? It's just this big concrete thing. It doesn't serve any value. And when we were challenged to get more revenue, someone said, well, it is a pretty cool place to watch the fireworks from. And someone said, yeah. And the food and beverage place is right there. What if we started serving desserts, and we had people watch the fireworks sitting down in front of the castle? And it went from this big thing we were thinking about tearing down to like an operation that probably clears $5 million a year now in dessert party revenue. And it'd been sitting there for all those years, and no one ever thought to use it differently at night for that use. So once again, the point is, it's not about just being smart it's about thinking differently about what you have. One other example I'll give you, I can't wait to see this. When we decided to build Tron when I was at the Magic Kingdom, I haven't been back there lately, but I think it's getting there. It's going up. It's going to be probably open the next 6 to 12 months. But we talked to the team in Shanghai who had opened Tron, and we said, okay, what can you tell us about this attraction we need to know? What should we fix? And they said, well, look, here's a big problem. You can take your bag on almost every attraction at Walt Disney World. But Tron is one of the first ones. You can't take a bag because you're on a light cycle. You can't have your backpack. You can't have all your stuff. And people don't want to leave their valuables out by their stroller outside the attraction. So they said we had to build a gigantic locker area just to have people put their stuff away. Now we have to pay all the labor to manage it, and it takes up all this room. And if we did this a different way, we would have done it differently. I said, well, how would you have done differently? They said, we don't know what the solution is, but we know the one we have is not the right solution. So we got a group together and started brainstorming. We started saying, all right, how can you, and I forget how it progressed, but we basically came to a conclusion. What if we let the guest have their backpack right up until the point they're going to board? And what if they could store the backpack somewhere? And people said, yeah, but the problem is once they get off the attraction, the backpack's on this side and they're on the unload side, and now you can't get them back to their backpack. And then someone else said, well, what if you had a locker with a wall? And what if when you went in, you put the bag in and you closed it, and when you went out, the other door of the locker was the exit hallway. And then when you walk by it, hopefully it's going to light up and pop open for you. And that's what we designed. So I'm looking forward to seeing that at Walt Disney World, Magic Kingdom, when someday I get to go see that, if they actually follow through on this design. And so we saved millions of dollars in labor, millions of dollars in infrastructure, because we thought about it differently. And there's opportunities in front of you every day to think about things differently. So, the recap here, if you're going to change things, get support from enthusiasts. Most companies, only 10 or 20% of people are enthusiastic about change. The rest are either neutral or negative. So you got to get the people who are excited. Explain why you're changing things. What's the point? Why are we going to make this different? Give yourself and your team the gift of time. We always underestimated how long change would take when we were doing something differently. So give yourself time. Don't try to be a hero. Start small and scale progressively. One other book recommendation I'll make is the Medici Effect. It helped me really think about design and innovation much differently. And the idea was, if you can create the smallest executable step to test, that's always the best. Don't spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to get to a test. Start something very small and see if it works. And if it doesn't work, you haven't lost a lot of money, you haven't spent a lot of money. In fact, we used to build the queue lines out of masking tape in a warehouse. How are you going to load this attraction? Well, let's build the queue line with masking tape on the floor. And once we see that works, then let's build some plywood queue lines and see if that works. So by the time we're designing and cutting steel and building the thing, we know this thing works, and we tested it a few times on a smaller scale. And lastly, measure your results against your guest expectations. A lot of times companies put new things in place that they celebrate, but the guest doesn't care. They're like, you know what, this made this more complicated, or that seems pretty cool, but I don't care about that. And so a lot of times, companies get too inwardly focused and they don't keep their eye on the ball, because the only person that's going to tell you if you were successful is the people paying you money for your products and services. So you always got to come back to your guests and make sure that whatever you're doing is benefiting them and the values there. So as they say at the Carousel of Progress, one of the classics, this was in the 1964 World's Fair. It's still operating at Walt Disney World. It's an oldie but a goodie. At one point, we were advertising it as it has air conditioning. So I don't know if that was the best shout out to Walt, but there's a great, big, beautiful tomorrow. And obviously, I think Walt Disney always had a really optimistic view of the future. And I think there's a lot of great things in the future. I know everyone is not sure about COVID and all the things that are happening, but I can tell you there's some great stuff ahead of us. So that being said, that's the end of my presentation. And I know Jody may have has been monitoring. I haven't had a chance to look at it. I know maybe there's some questions popping up in the chat group. So Jody, if you want to pick some out, or if you guys want to raise your hand, we'll do a little Q&A, and then we'll have Dave talk about the new website he's launching.
Well, we've had a lot of good comments, but no questions yet. So since there's no questions in the chat, if you have a question you'd like to ask Dan, you can go ahead and step up and do it. Oh, we've got one new message. What is that? Okay. So no questions yet. So
I see Joe Lynn in his Ford Maverick. That's a classic car. My aunt and uncle had one of those. I used to drive a Maverick. It's a loud car.
Yeah, so anyone feel free to jump in with a question. Dan, you may want to unshare your screen so we can see everybody. Okay, there we go.
Let me find where we are. Oh, we can do a gallery view, and I can see everybody there. All right. All right, everyone. Here we are.
Yes, we're all here. So you
First
can.
one's always the toughest.
It is you to be the first one to step up.
Well, everyone's deciding what they want to do. Dan, you might want to take this opportunity to make sure.
Yep.
What?
That's my book. Thanks, Dave.
And if you're like me, I don't take notes very often, but I did take notes on this one.
Good. Yeah, that was when we wrote the book. We wanted not only to be talking about leadership, but be a guide to really be hands-on, tactical. But that was a big thing that I see a lot of leadership things happening. They're philosophically very inspirational, but once you hear them, you don't know what you're supposed to go out and do. And I think that's such a big piece of executing, behaving differently. You know, life is full of, I wish I should have, I regret I didn't, or yeah, you're right. But it's like, you know, leadership, what you believe in, we talked about it earlier, your values, what you believe in is basically your actions. They represent what you believe in. And so if I hear people talk about time, I'm really passionate about this. I'm like, good for you. What do you do about that? Well, I really don't have time to support that cause. All right, well, then maybe you're not as passionate as you thought. So I think that accountability is important.
Hey, Dan, I have a question.
Sabrina, yes.
So I don't know if you'd mind sharing, what was one of your hardest days at Disney, and what do you think were some of the things that you've talked about from a leadership perspective that either kind of fell through the cracks, or somebody on your team that went through that, or maybe you did everything you could? I don't know.
Yeah. I had many of those days. There's a couple quotes that I really liked. I'll share. One is this idea: some days you're the Louisville Slugger, and some days you're the Ball. And I don't care what job you're in and what you do. Some days you're like the best leader, manager ever, and then other days you're like, I'm definitely gonna lose my job. How could I not have foreseen this? So I guess if I look back at some of the worst days, you know, we had moments. I didn't deal directly with any, because we do have deaths at Disney, and I was never under my operation in the position where I had to deal with an accident that someone was, killed, which, and that happens, and it's not because I ran a perfect operation. I was just probably lucky that I just didn't have to deal with that at any point. But we certainly had moments where people have heart attacks, and those were always hard. Probably the hardest moments for me is when I could have planned better. I should have put more due diligence into something. I should have listened more, and we failed. And the weight of the responsibility. When I was at studios, we did. This is one that's still. This was a hard night. But we wanted to do a hard ticket party. We do the Christmas parties and the Halloween parties, and we make a lot of revenue because you put people in the park in the day, and you clear the park, and they buy a second ticket. It's a great business model. And we knew there was an opportunity at the studios, and we knew people love the villains. Everyone wants the villains, and they want to see and so we said, okay, we're going to have a villains event, and we're going to test it out. And we're going to close the park, and we're going to sell tickets, and we're going to have 50 villains. And that sounded like a lot of villains until like 10,000 people showed up. And then it didn't seem like that many villains anymore. And the problem was we set most of them up as meet and greets, which I should have known better, because meet and greets are so inefficient. You can get like 150 people an hour to a meet and greet, as opposed to a walk around. So I don't get to meet you, but I get to see the villains mixing with the crowd. Or we do a villains parade. And the second thing I found out after the event was California had done this, but they had blocked out cast members, and we didn't. And after the event, I'm like, did anyone think about that? They're like, yeah, it was all over online. All the cast were coming. I'm like, why didn't anyone ever mention that? Well, we thought you knew. And so it was just one of those moments where I should have asked a lot more questions. I should have really dug in with the industrial engineers to understand. Because if we had played it out in a simulation, we would have known that this was a disaster coming. And I look back on it, and I take personal responsibility for that night. I'm like, man, I let the cast down, I let people down, and I learned a ton from it. And it's too bad it happened, but it made me much better at asking questions, much better at triple checking things, much better at getting industrial engineering to weigh in and shoot holes in it every time I plan something from then on out. And after that, I still had some mistakes, but not to that level. So those are tough nights to go home. The other quote I'll share, you can probably see it up on the photo behind me, is that was my grandfather. He was the U.S. Naval Academy, and he was in World War II on the Columbia, and he retired as a Rear Admiral in the Navy. He was a really impressive guy. And he left me with a quote, and the quote is, you do your best, and then you forgive yourself. And so every day you go out and you do your best. And the problem is some days your best will not be good enough. You'll fail anyway. But what you got to do is forgive yourself, leave it behind you, which is so hard. We like to carry this around. Even telling the story, I feel the guilt again of that event. And this was like 10 years ago. And I don't even work at Disney anymore. But you got to let go of this stuff because you can't go back in time and you can't fix things back in time. All you can do is learn and get better moving forward. And if you learn how to do that, you'll be in a much better place and much happier. But a lot of us are taught you're supposed to hold on to stuff like that and feel the pain of the guilt because you messed up and you should pay the price. You should feel bad. Well, feel bad, then let it go and move on. It's a great way to live life. Right?
Dan, I have a couple more questions. And before I move on to those, I want to mention the next event for the attractions group is April 14th with Joel Manby. And Joel was the CEO of SeaWorld. So that will also be an interesting one. The question, Dan, what advice do you have for leaders who see their team members struggling with taking care of themselves?
Yeah. I think if you feel like you have an appropriate enough relationship with them, talk to them or, buy them a book, leave it on their desk, self-care, give them some hints. It just depends how to get there. But, today there's so much stress and there's so much anxiety that people have. I don't think we can just sit back and say, well, that's the boss's job. I think if you're working on a team, I think you owe it to people to breach it. Now they may push back hard and say, look, my boss is none of your business. And you've taken that opportunity. But everyone goes through difficult times and teams got to watch each other's backs. And I saw it at Disney. Like I said, no team individually is strong enough to get through all the things you got to get through. You got to count on each other. And I had teams that reported to me that were like dream teams, and I had other teams that worked together, and that's as far as we got. So it's chemistry, it's backgrounds, it's personalities. You're not always going to have this great team that's like all watching each other's backs and has each other all the time. Sometimes you have simply a really good working team, and sometimes you have teams that are just great, and that happens. I don't know why that gels sometimes, but I would speak up and talk to people because you never know that one comment you're going to make, that one little moment of empathy or caring, how that's going to get people. I got home back in 2017 from work one night, and Valerie asked me one simple question: do you still enjoy what you're doing at Disney? And because she'd seen for about 6 months, she's like, there wasn't like this kick in my step anymore. And I was just like, I didn't even notice it, but she did. And that simple question led to us having a 12 months of conversation before I got up the guts and courage to resign and go start our own thing. But I never would have recognized it. Now, she's my wife, so I'm glad she gave me that input. But there's no reason I think any of us should see if someone's in a difficult situation should be at least take an opportunity to get it on the radar that things don't look like what they should. And there may be opportunities beyond that to help them. So a lot of us say, well, it's not my place. It's not my place. But helping other people, I don't know why it wouldn't ever be your place. How far you take it, that's you got to use your best judgment.
Yeah, and go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to bring up that there's a question that came up on the chat line from Chris Schneider. I don't know if that's what you're going to do, Jody, or not. But how many chances do you give an employee who seems to poison the environment, and what are some of the steps to help correct the toxicity?
Yeah, that's a great one. I've learned a lot about this later in my career at Disney, and a lot since I've left Disney. There's a lot of things I've had chances to develop, and I always say, man, if I could just go back, there's so many things I could do better. But I think the big thing is set clear expectations up front of what you expect from people. I've been in those moments where someone does something And I kind of get frustrated. I want to tell them, but I'm like, I don't even think I ever told them how they're supposed to do it. So who am I to go coach them now and correct the behavior I never made clear to them? So expectations up front is so important. And when I say expectations, it's not telling people, you should ever tell, like for me, telling someone to have a bad attitude is the worst piece of feedback you can give them. But what does that mean? I don't know what your attitude is, but I do know if you didn't look at someone, you ignored somebody, you complained, you rolled your eyes, it has to be observable behaviors. So that's the big thing about giving feedback. Be very specific about what the behavior was, because you're asking people to correct behaviors. I can't tell you to change your attitude. You still might not like working here, but if you act like you do, then it's fine with me. So the behavioral piece is important. Tell them what the right behavior looks like. You know what, the future, if someone gives you a comment like that, I'd ask you you may not have noticed it, but the nonverbal cues, you look very defensive. And I'll let you know if I see that in the future. And here's some training to think about that. And if it happens again, you give them that feedback again. And eventually, either the behavior changes or you have to ratchet it up to a point where you're going to have to get rid of that person. And usually the behavior changes. And a lot of times, or sometimes it doesn't. People, once you give them feedback, they choose not to change. As a leader, it's not your fault people don't change behaviors. People, if you're clear on what they need to change, they don't, that's their decision. And as a leader, you have the responsibility to make sure that you either get them to change behavior or they can't be in your organization. A book, I'll tell you, a great one is Radical Candor by, I remember her name. It's not Beth Scott. Her last name's Scott. Anyway, she was with Facebook for a long time, and she has this great concept of care personally and challenge directly. And I would highly recommend, if you want to get better at giving feedback and thinking about how you do that, fantastic book, Radical Candor.
Hi, Dan.
Deshaun raised his hand.
Hi. Sorry. Hi. I have a more generic question just regarding career advice. So I am fortunate enough to have gotten a full-time position, especially during a pandemic. I'm currently an operations scheduling coordinator at Dollywood, but I would ultimately like to end up with Disney, as I'm sure a lot of people on this call are. What advice do you have for someone like myself who's just getting started in their career, but gaining experience outside of Disney? And what experiences do you think I should seek out to become a more competitive applicant in the future?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I mean, Disney's very unique in that sense. People ask me, well, how did you get to be Vice President of Magic Kingdom? I'm like, well, I decided 26 years earlier to start parking cars there because I never would have gotten the company if I waited. So what I see at Disney is, at least in operations, more than 99% of the people get promoted in operations are at Disney. We have so many talented people there, and we get to see them in action, and we teach them how to do it the Disney way, and we see their leadership skills. So coming in externally into a management role at Disney is like next to impossible. I mean, it's just because that's just the way, it's one of the advantages Disney has. Now, marketing, IT, finance, we recruit people externally all the time because that's a transferable skill, and we can find some great talent externally. But if you want to have a career at Disney, what I told people is move to Orlando, go get your foot in the door. With the union guidelines, every full-time role is offered to an internal candidate first before external. So unless you're in a booming economy and we can't get enough full-time people, it's really hard to even get a full-time job. So you get your foot in the door, you get a part-time job at Disney, and you work someplace else, and eventually you get in a full-time role. And once you're in a full-time role at Disney, then all the doors start opening. If you're a high performer, you can get the management training programs, you can network, you can get to know people, and your path begins. But I've had people call me from various companies, directors, how do I get in? I'm like, I have no idea. I don't know what to tell you. Come here 10 years ago. It's too late now. Because if we always prefer people internally than externally, and when you have so many talented people internally, you just don't have the occasion to go externally very often. So it's not, a lot of people get frustrated by that answer. Like, look, I got 3 kids and a mortgage. I can't get a part-time job parking cars at Disney. I'm like, I didn't say you have to. I'm just saying that you're not gonna make that change unless you do something that, if you have a skill set that Disney doesn't already have, and they have a lot of skill sets internally.
Thank you.
Sure, sure.
Hi, I have a question as well.
Yes, sir.
In September, I will start to study leisure and event management with a specialization in attraction and theme park management. It is because my dream is to become a manager in operations, and I'm going to do a little bit more research about the function of duty manager. But I was wondering if you have some tips on how to stay at Disney after an international college program, because I'm from the Netherlands. So yeah, I have to do a college program.
You can do what I did, just stay in France for 5 years. And I married a French woman. I got my green card. So this is probably not the response you wanted, but it's hard. It's hard to stay because you're going to be on a work visa. And after that, you can enter the green card lottery. You can, a lot of countries, expats usually get, they're sponsored by their companies because they have a skill set they can't get within that country. And that's usually at an executive level. And the other one is marry someone from that country. And, my wife and I have been dating and we're living together. And we said, look, we're going to get married eventually, but we got to do it in the next 8 weeks if we're going to stay together. So we had like a 6-week engagement, got married 2 months later. And she still laughs. Our 28th wedding anniversary is coming up. She's like, did you just marry me for the green card? Just like to stay in France? And I'm like, look, does it even matter anymore? We got 3 kids. But anyway, that's a hard one. It's a dilemma. And I don't know what to tell you, except keep looking for different work visas. But eventually you'll get to a point where, if you work for a hotel company somewhere, and some of the high-end hotel companies, they're able to move people because they want the language skills. But I've had many people talk about that after their 1 year at Epcot. How do I stay? It's like, well, there's not a lot of solutions there.
And would you say that work experience and network will open the doors for you to stay, not for the visa and everything, but that the company would allow you to stay?
I don't think so. There's not, you can do a great job, but if you're, like I said, it comes down to a legal thing, you need to get a visa. And the visas for expats are very expensive. And there's certain things you need to meet. Like, okay, can you prove that the chef we're bringing, the chef we're bringing, you don't have any other chef that in the United States that has a skill set? Well, yeah, they're an expert. They went to the Paul Bocuse cooking school. They did this, and you can justify that. But usually, any job below the executive level is very difficult to justify. So, once again, I'm not sure. I know a lot of Americans who've gone back and kind of figured out their Irish heritage and gotten an Irish passport so they could access to the European Union. I mean, there's different ways to get there, but just purely to come over, it's very difficult to stay here over a period of time because the U.S. has as many, requirements as others. And once again, you need a green card to stay here permanently. And like I said, there's lotteries. I know people that enter the green card lottery every year, and some people get a green card to come over, but it's not easy to do.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah. And Dave, I know we're bumping up against time. Maybe we'll take one more question. And then if you have any words of wisdom for the group, because I think it's really exciting that Joel to come speak. And I think this is a cool forum you set up, this educational forum and connecting in the theme park space. I think this has a lot of potential.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Very good.
Right. Well, no, I'm glad that everybody who was on here was able to. I was messaging Jody offline, and at my last count, there are 31 people that, for whatever reason, I don't know if it was an external link. I was answering messages the whole time. My phone kept beeping. 31 people were not able to get on. I don't know what happened there or why, but so fortunately, this was recorded, and sometime between now and tomorrow morning, I'll get the link up. But I'm very thankful, Dan, that you did this. It was a good way to start us off, and I hope it's worthwhile for everyone who's on here. And it's something that we hope we're taking from your cue earlier. Start small, scale, and grow with it. And I hope that what is developed here is something that is worthwhile and of value for people that they can use whether they are just getting started in the industry or they are 15, 20 years in.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. There are power in networks, and getting to know like-minded people is a very, very valuable thing as you move on in your career. So I think this is a great starting point. All right. Well, I hope everyone has a nice evening. Be safe. And us older people get our vaccines soon. So I'm getting mine on Friday. You younger people gonna have to wait a while, but you're nice and healthy. Right, Joe?
I actually
Oh,
our second vaccine on Thursday. So
Nice. Congratulations.
yep, you should get it. And that's the key. I'm telling you, it's the only way we'll choke this thing out. So
Yeah,
David, I appreciate it. Dan, you did a great
Yeah.
job.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Yep, you betcha.
Good
You
night.
betcha. See you guys.
Bye, everybody.